Hello everyone, Tactical Lich here. Today we're back to another battle between Central Scrutinizer and Coitus Interfratus for their best of 5 in Cool Umbrella's Friday Night Fight Finals. Now, for the army builds here, we are doing it in pause mode because, as you can see, the Dryads are Vanguard deployed right in the face of the Dark Elves. 5 Dryads in total supported by Branch Wraith, and on the flanks a lot of mobility in the form of Glade Riders, Great Stag Knights, a single Sisters of the Throne, and on the other side, more Glade Riders with spears and a single Wild Hunters of Kernus. Leading the army for Coitus is the melee variant Glade Lord. He has some great supporting abilities and items with Call of the Woods plus 5 melee attack, and more importantly Helm of the God with minus 24 attack and defense to surrounding enemies, especially with Banner of the Hunter King providing even more melee attack and additional charge bonus. Overall, a solid fighter that synergizes well with this melee oriented army. For the spell support here, we have a single Branch Wraith also being Vanguard deployed in the front, providing some healing in the form of Earth Blood and Pendulum as some area of effect damage. On the other flank, we have Dark Elves going wide here with Bleak Swords, 5 of them in total, spreading out with the Dread Spears guarding their flanks. And then a whole lot of mobility, Dark Riders with shields, Dark Riders, Koan Knights, and more Koan Knights on the flank and in the middle. At the back there are more Dark Elf mobility, this time the ranged firepower, Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. Great armor piercing to deal with trees and dragons, but more importantly their speed allows them to survive better without any infantry protection. For the leadership here, Malice Darkblade providing some nice single entity fighting power, and in the skies Sorcerers of Fire with the Burning Head and a single fireball spell. Now without further ado, let's get the battle started as the Dryads will be bum rushing the Dark Elves. Central Scrutinizer, seeing this Vanguard deployed army, seems to be caught by surprise. He is pulling back his front line while moving up the mobility to better poise for a counter charge, while on the flanks here the mobility is also retracting, knowing that there might be more mobility from the forest pushing towards his flank, trying to get a more defensive formation here, while the Bleak Swords would now be counter-charging the Dryads. Not exactly the greatest trait for them because they're light armor, not the highest melee defense. All these makes them rather susceptible to the aggressive melee stats of the Dryads, especially when Dryads have decent armor and physical resistance to mitigate damage. Now on the flanks here, the Dread Spears are being charged by a combination of Dryads and the Sisters of the Thorn, now receiving a bit of Earth Blood to keep the Sisters' HP high. Despite having very low armor, the Sisters do have 40% of physical resistance. A lot of that damage is actually mitigated, and they are surviving right now, especially with the support of Dryads beating down the Dark Riders. A little bit of Burning Head debuffing their leadership, but damage-wise not a whole lot of work being done against them. While on the flanks here, the Koan Knights being caught actually countercharged by the Great Stag Knights, and they're suffering massively at the hands of the elite Wood Elf Cavalry. Yes, their charge bonus helps them dish out some damage against the Great Stag Knights, but the Great Stag Knights have healing, these Raptor Cavalry doesn't, and especially with the Glade Lord jumping in, the Great Stag Knights now have 55 melee attack, absolutely dumpstering these poor Koan Knights, who are also susceptible to terror, and they will be routed by a combination of Wood Elf elite units. Now for the frontline infantry fight, not too surprising here, Dryads beating down Bleak Swords all over the field, while here Malice Darkblade trying to push away the Sisters of the Thorn and the Branch Wraith, and the Dryads will be supporting the Wood Elf army trying to bog down Malice Darkblade. At this point, there are enough dead bodies on the field that the Dark Elves army ability, the Murderous Prowess, has been activated. This gives the Druchii an army-wide leadership and damage buff, but it is not infinite, so it is possible to wait out the buff. Very wisely, Coitus Interfratus responded by holding back all his forces, trying to avoid engagement wherever possible. The Glade Gods are pulling back one of them, slamming into the backs of some Bleak Swords, routing them with some rear charge damage, but the other one unfortunately get caught but will soon move on and keep avoiding engagement. The Glade Gods are shooting, but the Wood Elf's more elite cavalry are also holding back, trying to stay away from the juiced up Dark Elf forces, just patiently waiting for the Murderous Prowess to run out while the Dryads are fulfilling the attacking rule. Now, unfortunately for Central Scrutinizer, his forces are all being held back and not actually utilizing this damage boost right now. They can't even stand still to shoot at the Dryads, as the Glade Gods are now countering them with a volley of arrows. Most of the damage boost from the Murderous Prowess is indeed wasted. A massive loss for the Dark Elves, since the potential damage spike could often decide a game. Now, the Wild Hunters of Kurnos, which has been held back in reserve for almost the entire game till now, will finally be seeing combat. The Raptor Cavalry might be catching some Glade Riders, but then the Wild Hunters will be jumping in, charging straight into the flanks and rear of the Koan Knights. The Koan Knights are trying to pull out, but unfortunately some of them are caught up on their victim and will soon be dragged down by the anti-large Wild Hunters and also the Glade Lord himself, especially when all these surrounding units, including these Glade Riders, are buffed up by the 2 melee attack items and abilities, Call of the Woods and Banner of the Hunter King. And unfortunately for Central Scrutinizer, these Koan Knights will be seen off. The repeater crossbows are now shooting at the Glade Lord here, but not the most damage, unfortunately, as the Glade Lord does have a lot of damage mitigation against physical missiles. Scaly Skin providing a 25% missile resistance and then physical resistance from the Forest Dragon. That is a total of 45% damage mitigation against physical missiles. The repeater crossbows are pouring their armor-piercing bolts into the Glade Lord, but the Glade Lord is simply shrugging everything off. At the back, a Burning Head and Dread Spears are dragging down some Wild Hunters of Kurnos, but they will continue to use their speed to their advantage, chasing down the routed Koan Knights. While the Dark Riders here trying their best to escape all these pursuing Wood Elf Cavalry, Dark Riders moving out as well, being routed by a combination of Elite Wood Elf Cavalry and the Glade Lord once again, while the Branch Wraith is trying to dish out as much pain as possible against whatever target that is near her. Being tied down by the Great Stag Knights and the Dryads coming in, the Dark Riders will not be having a good time, while the Glade Lord is just flying around the skies. Fighting a full health Malus is definitely not a good idea, but all Glade Lords have their bows and arrows, so he can try to sit back and chip away Malus' health with his missiles. Over here, Wild Hunters of Kurnos will be chasing after the Dark Riders who attempted to drag down the Great Stag Knights. Great Stag Knights charging Koan Knights and Koan Knights counter-charging, but unfortunately with the Helm of Discord debuffing their melee stats down to 5, 6, and 5 now that they got a single chevron, there's no way for them to hold up in this combat against a superior force of mobility. There's just too much Wood Elf Cavalry here, especially with a rear charge from the Forest Dragon. Yep, the Koan Knights are indeed gone. Burning Head here doing some nice damage to the Dryads, but not so much to the Cavalry. They're not that much susceptible to the area of effect wind spell, and the rest of the Wood Elf army are just running down all kinds of scattered Dark Elf units. We'll be fast forwarding a bit here as the Wood Elves are just chasing down all these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. Yes, they are taking some damage, but the Great Stag Knights do have enough leadership that they will continue to hold, while the poor Dark Riders will be sandwiched by Dryads and Wild Hunters of Kurnos and pushed off the battlefield. Some Koan Knights are trying their best to save whatever they can, but they themselves will be finished off by the Wild Hunters as well, who does have some nice anti-large bonus, while Malus Darkblade will be chasing down the remaining Glade Gods, who did some nice work earning back their value, but then there's no mobility to protect them right now, as most of the Wood Elf mobility are committed to chasing off the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, and the Wood Elf missiles will be gone. We'll be going to full speed fast forward here, as we'll be going into a very dragged out phase of the battle. The two forces are now far from each other on the map, as Malus and his sorcerers are chasing off some routed Glade Gods. The Wood Elves reformed ranks and will be moving ever so slightly forward towards Malus Darkblade, slowly marching forth as they are trying to recover some vigor with their walking stance, while Malus Darkblade and the Sorcerers of Fire will be returning to the middle fight and start engaging in attack once more. Though Coitus isn't in a hurry to fight just yet, patiently waiting, throwing in some chaff to occupy Malus Darkblade. Now Wild Hunters surrounding Malus, and the Glade Lord is diving down with Helm of Discord active. A massive damage spike bursting down Malus, forcing Central Scrutinizer to summon Zarkan instead. Once again, Coitus will be playing the waiting game, holding all his elites back while throwing in chaff or some disposable units to fulfill the attacking role. Zarkan's HP is constantly dropping, so theoretically you can simply wait long enough and he will drop dead, and any damage you deal to him will just accelerate that process. The Glade Lord is now just holding back, chipping away Zarkan's health with his bow. The Fire Sorcerers are trying to do some psycho charging, but not a lot of impact here. And then the Glade Lord finally has his Helm of Discord finished cooldown, charging straight into combat. Zarkan, his HP dropping low and his stats are debuffed. With Zarkan slain, Coitus Interfratus will be pulling back one victory. First of all, GG to both players here, especially Rescue Mamon from Calzonesos, waiting out a lot of key moments for the Dark Elf armies, basically wasting most of the buff from the Dark Elf's murderous prowess, and also in the end waiting for the key moment to strike to hit up the Dark Elves and snipe out Darkan once and for all. Patience is indeed a legitimate tactic, and waiting out, evading unfavorable combats while taking favorable ones is a key aspect of strategy. For this battle here, army performances, the Glade Lord did very well, with the support of the rest of the infantry beating down the Bleak Swords, Dread Spears, and then the expensive elite cavalry of the Wood Elf army, despite their light armor, actually did really well here, punching down all kinds of Dark Elf cavalry. The Cohen cavalry especially did not trade too well against the Wood Elf cavalry there, especially when they're not able to use the murderous prowess to their advantage. For the rest of the Dark Elf army here, repeater crossbows, these ones did great, these ones not so much. And the Dark Riders plus the Bleak Sword Stress Spear didn't do much damage either, barely earning back half their cost. Malus Darkblade tried his best to carry, but just not quite enough, as the Wood Elves basically ignored him for most of the battle, only engaging him when the Helm of Discords are up, nuking his stats and nuking his HP as a result. For the Sorcerers of Fire, did some really nice fiery damage with the Burning Head and some fireballs, but that's about it. After all, the Wood Elves do lack armor to mitigate the damage from her spells, and they rely a lot on that physical resistance to protect themselves and that magic damage from the Burning Head. Anyways, that's it for today's battle, with Rescue Mimon, also known as Coitus Interfratus, winning the second game of the series. That means we'll be seeing a third battle tomorrow. Be sure to subscribe to my channel to get notified when the battle is released, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.